It's time for Geocache Talk. Whether you are at work, in the car, or wherever you are, we hope you enjoy this show about the great sport of geocaching. If you're watching live on YouTube, you can be part of the adventure tonight in the chat room and participate with others as they watch the show. If you are listening later, please give it a like and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app so that you can get all of the weekly Geocache Talk goodness. If you have not become a patron of the Geocache Talk Network, what are you waiting for? Patron levels start as low as a Bison Tube level at $3 a month. The sign up is easy. Simply go to the Geocache Talk website and click on the Become a Patron button, or go to patreon.com/Geocache Talk. Patrons now get the famous Blackout coin, invites to special events, and other really great items throughout the year. Become a patron today. Have you subscribed to FTF Magazine yet? FTF Magazine is the #1 geocaching magazine available. It is a quarterly magazine that you can be part of. Submit your geocaching milestones and adventures to be published. FTF Magazine is also interactive with puzzles to solve and the hunt to find Spartacus. If you can solve the puzzle or find Spartacus, then you will be entered in to win a special pack tag. Every new subscription, you will receive a special swag pack. Subscribing is easy. Just visit FTF's website, ftfgeo.com. Don't miss out and subscribe today.
Logwork, the creators of the fantastic logbooks made with genuine write-in-the-rain paper. The logbooks designed for the micro-containers of the present and future, geared towards the hider who'd rather go caching than doing cache maintenance. Find them at logwork.com. That's logwerk.com.
Big thanks to Derek, Baker Six Clan, and our new patrons, Crickets. Cricket sound. I need to get a cricket sound because we don't have any new patrons. But let's celebrate our O's tonight. Oh, let's celebrate. Okay, that was bad. So our Ohio Brian, he's a key finder recently. We've got some Oklahoma, Danny and Dusty. We've got Lauren. Dusty's in Kansas. I don't know why he shows up in. Oh, no, he isn't. Different Dusty. Sorry. I have two Dustys. Dusty and Sepulpa. Sorry about that. Lauren and Paul are in Ontario. There's an O. And then Benjamin and our very own Emily in Oregon. So thank you to all our patrons for keeping the show on the air. And we've got a big show tonight. So I'm going to bring in the whole crew plus our guests. And there they are. Hey, everybody. So John and Jesse, of course, and our guest tonight, Gary Lewis, the father of geocaching earth caches. Do you like that, Gary?
Makes me feel old.
I didn't say the grandfather of it. But you're the father.
You could say the godfather. I mean, really all the strings, right?
There you go.
The godfather of earth caches.
No, delighted to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being with us. It's always fun. Check out one of our old shows too. We had you on. That was great. So we've got a couple quick things we need to do. Let's do some quick news. So hopefully everybody grabbed a cache to get your souvenir, the Blue Switch Day souvenir.
Did we all do that?
I did.
No,
Zero for John.
Sorry, guys. I'm still rehabbing. I got X-rays on Friday, so hopefully.
You didn't have any pocket caches in there that you could do, like
like.
I'll listen to this, Gary, but like an earth cache you mentioned recently.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying, Jesse? Save those earth caches for a special occasion like this?
Look, we all have them pocketed. Come on, you know what's up.
Go log
and challenges, those just happen to be pocketed every once in a while. No. I had an emergency when I pulled out for it. I actually went to get it, but there was one right on the corner of my neighborhood, and I have not touched it intentionally for something like this.
Right.
I knew we had a busy weekend with a trip and everything else. So today I had to go to the McDonald's and get a cache. I've been saving it for a while, so I pulled it out today and went and got it.
Sounds like a waymark.
Smart move.
Not an Earthcache, or not a.
It was a physical
geocache.
cache. It wasn't a waymark.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yep, I had one in town that I was like, I'm like you. It's like, I'll find it someday. It's like, oh, blue swit. I'll go grab it real quick. So
Yeah, I couldn't let it go. I had to get the souvenir. So
another quick note on Cache Fest Oklahoma. The deadline will be this time next week. So May 12th, 1 week to go for packages. And people always ask. And so I always make a quick note. The fact that we have to, even though it's in July, we have to cut off the package purchases in May, because we have to let them know how many to make, and it takes them a while to make coins.
not Amazon. You can't get it same day. We have
Exactly.
outside the country. It just takes that long to process it.
Yep.
Quality stuff takes time for sure.
Yeah.
Friends of Cache Fest Oklahoma is back open, but it's only temporary. We're trying to fill some final slots, couple slots left. So if you want any of that, go to cachefest.com, one word, cachefest, and you will see the items for sale. We did create a Cache Fest Hawaii Facebook community group. So if you're interested in that, I can post that here in a minute if you want to be part of that. If you're considering coming to Hawaii next July, not this July, next July, for Cache Fest. And then I want to put this up on the screen temporarily so you can see we're still taking non-traditional hides, right, John?
Absolutely. So anybody from our last show that wants to submit them, get them in. This is the QR code for a Google form where you can submit your non-traditional hide. We're just looking for cache name, GC code, your name, and then a note if you want to add about it. And 3 people, we're going to look at the most favorited caches, and invite those people onto the show. They're going to get some pretty sweet prizes.
Yep.
We've already received a number of really cool cache submissions,
Cool,
including one from Mr. Brian Klinger, K-Blast, the grandmother of all puzzles. So we've heard of the mother of all puzzles, but I don't know if everybody's heard of the grandmother of all puzzles.
I think we should. I think Brian would be perfect for that. Hopefully he's in tonight. We can ask him about being the grandmother. That'd be perfect.
So, what is your guess on the dominant type that we're going to get submitted
For non-traditional?
Yeah, for the non-traditional one, yeah.
Oh gosh, that's a good question.
Got to be unknown.
That would be my guess. If I had to lay money down, like if I had to bet somebody pizza, I would say mystery for sure.
Mystery.
For anybody that submits a Wherigo, I will rig the election. Don't worry.
You want to put a where I go? Yeah.
Put that out there. Or what's another example of what they could do?
They could
letterbox hybrid.
Yeah.
Earthcache.
Oh, Earthcache. There you go. God.
There you go.
And
perfect.
We all know from last week's show, when you look at the percentage of caches, so looking at the cache type for a cache with 5 or more favorite points, Earthcache, as we found out, it's one of the most heavy percentages.
Yeah, we did.
What beat Earthcache? I don't remember. Besides webcam, because they don't count.
Virtual.
Okay. They don't really count either, because if you already had a virtual, you're probably not hanging on to it. But there was a recent one where people had virtuals recently, so they may have one in their pocket. But
this
if you're going to go for the highest favorite points, Earthcache would be it right now.
That would be a pretty sweet way to go.
Yeah.
Gary's on board. So Gary, this is interesting. This is a good way to start talking about Earthcaches. And again, happy anniversary to Earthcaches. Cheers, mate, my buddy from down under. You don't live in Australia anymore, do you?
No, I'm up in northeastern US. I'm in Maine.
Yeah, you're in Maine. That's awesome. But we were talking last week about. Oh wow, what's library cache?
Letterbox.
LBH?
Letterbox
Come on, Gary.
Oh, letterbox hybrid. Sorry, when
I'm
I saw
praising more than you
LB,
tonight.
I immediately thought of library. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But so that's awesome. Yeah, letterbox hybrids. If they're done right, they're cool. So
Very
this
good.
is interesting. So we were doing these stats last week, Gary, about percentages, and I found this one to be interesting. And John put in the notes too, and we'll get back to some of the other ones too. But percentage of each cache type with 5 or more favorite points, and of all the Earth caches in the world, the number that have at least 5 or more was 78%. I thought that was pretty cool. Now, what are your thoughts?
Well, it goes without saying. They take you to really interesting places. You're not going to a guardrail. You're not going to a lamppost, right? So they take you to interesting places, and it's a real bonus when you can to go to some place that's super interesting. So that's why they're getting the favorite points.
Man, you're exactly right. I mean,
And they're rarely ever going to be muggled. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
I got a story to tell about that, about Earthcache 1 later on. Remind me of that.
Yeah, it's not impossible. Mother Nature can do it, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, we'll talk about Earthcache 1 here in a minute, but a couple other stats that I think was cool is there's 3 million in the world, and I guess interesting, worth discussion is there's 41,424 Earth caches as of a few minutes ago. So I kind of like the fact that it didn't become like waypoints where there's one in every corner, because it wouldn't make any sense to do that. So I kind of like that percentage. I don't know, Gary, what your thoughts on?
It's kind of interesting because, the sites that make great Earth caches aren't like guardrails or lampposts. So they're not everywhere, they're unique. So I would have thought somewhere around about the 40 to 50,000 mark, and you've almost got global saturation.
Oh, wow.
So what is really interesting, there's 41,000 of them. They're on every single continent. There are no lamppost caches in Antarctica. Right?
No.
So they're on every single continent. And if you actually look at a map of where the Earth caches are located, it's an amazing distribution around the world. There are obviously peaks in countries where caching is, really prominent. So there's lots of them in the US and Canada. There's lots of them in Germany,
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter where I go on the planet, I can find Earth caches. Can't find webcams everywhere, right?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. But you can find an Earth cache.
Yes.
They're not just located all in the US or all in Australia or all in Germany. They're like everywhere. And like I said, it's not something that you can just replicate at lots and lots and lots of different places.
Correct.
People have tried in the past and found that those types of sites have been closed for people for doing Earth caches. Waterfalls is an example.
Right.
Because there wasn't a unique lesson being learnt by people doing exactly the same task at every single waterfall. So yeah, I'm proud that there's 41,000 active Earth caches still today. I think the number may have been higher, and then they've come back a little bit. But certainly, I think that's an amazing number. The last time I did statistics, which is now a few years ago, and it's based on the number of people, average number of people that are visiting Earth caches times the number of logs times the number of caches. 14 million people have visited Earthcaches.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And that's a lot, if you
That's a
compare that to geocaches in general, it's a tiny number. But
Yeah.
14 million people have learnt something about our planet. That makes me a proud father of Earthcaching.
Absolutely.
People have learnt something. And that, to me, that's brilliant. That's why
Yeah.
I do, right? So
That is awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
I think another thing that I think Earthcaches are unique for, and why they're in such good locations as opposed to some of the other ones, is the maintenance issue, which we're not going to get into. But like to hide a cache, a physical cache, you have to be there to maintain it. However, when you go to one of those amazing places, like on a vacation somewhere out in the wilderness, you can actually hide an Earthcache there, get it approved, and you don't have to be able to go back and return to it all the time. So I think that helps. It's not just around pockets of neighborhoods. It can be anywhere in the world and be a good active cache, taking somebody to an amazing location. So that's an advantage you don't really have, other than virtuals, but you can't really put those out all the time. But you don't really have that with any other cache type. So you can really seek out an amazing area that's harder to get to, but you don't have to return to it all the time to check on it. So that probably helps the proliferation of Earthcaches in really nice locations.
yeah, absolutely. And I have people who come on trips with me who have set up Earthcaches in Iceland. Big shout out to Zuma Ralph.
Absolutely.
And caches in Hawaii. We've gone to places and looked at the geology, and there hasn't been an Earthcache there, and a person has turned around and said, you know what, I'd really like to make this an Earthcache, and away they've gone. So Jesse, absolutely, I think you're spot on. It's one of the advantages of Earthcaches. Some Earthcaches have been taken offline because of safety issues. There's an Earthcache, for example, at Lulworth, just outside of Lulworth Cove in England. Been a large landslide just recently.
Oh,
access,
no.
you can't get access to the Earthcache anymore. There's an Earthcache that's going to be archived. So, like all caches, there will be there are some issues and access and safety for Earthcaches is something that, I would like to think that if someone set up an Earthcache in a place that is along a trail, along a coastline or a cliff, that they would at least go and visit it occasionally. As I do with Earthcache 1, which is in Australia, I visit it every single time I'm in Australia to make sure that the access and everything is still fine, and adjust the cache notes if required.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we should probably step back for a second. And for those that are not aware, Gary was part of creating Earthcaches, and the process we've talked about on a previous show, but I guess we should at least kind of revisit that a little bit. But and we can talk about Earthcache 1, and I've got in the notes, and the notes will be available after the show. But I think I'll even pull it up. But as you talk about it, but kind of tell everybody about what it was like. And this was the high date shows 1/10 of 2004, so 20 years. I don't. Do you remember when? Let's see. I can probably figure out when it was. Did you put it in January, but it didn't get published for a while, or what was the story behind getting that one, the first one, published?
So we had I worked for the Geological Society of America back in the day, and we had a member of the Geological Society come and see us and say, you know what, you guys should get involved in this game of geocaching. That's all basically that was said. Right. And at the time, I had been working with the National Parks program on a completely separate program, and I mentioned to the folks from the National Park Service about geocaching, and they looked at me like I was the devil himself,
Right.
They were just so anti-geocaching. Like, they literally would collect geocaches and burn them in bonfires and, like, stand around them clapping,
Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
Being the sort of inquisitive guy I was, I sort of said, well, what's the issue? And they laid out all of the issues that they had about caches in national parks, taking the people to places that they're trying to protect, people not staying on trails and just like bush bashing, as we say in Australia, blazing new trails, and all these different issues that they had. And it's against the law to leave trash in a national park, so they considered a container of trash. So I took all of those concerns and I contacted geocaching.com. Back in the day, it was called Groundspeak, and said, okay, we've got this issue with the National Park Service that they mentioned to me, and I want to get involved in geocaching. Let's sit down and chat about it. So we did. So Jeremy and Elias, and the original person I spoke to was Brian Roth, who's still there. We sat down and talked about it with the National Park Service and came up with the concept of an Earthcache. That must have been late 2003. So I went on holidays. I was in Australia because I was living half my life in Australia and half my life in the States. So my daughter, Fiona, and I went and walked around an area that we always went on holidays every single summer and created Earthcache 1.
Yep.
You set it up as a traditional cache, which then behind the scenes, Jeremy's team converted it to the Earthcache. So that's how the first one, in fact, that's how the first many were created.
We're done.
So I set up Earthcache 1, Earthcache 2, which is Earthcache 1's on the south coast of New South Wales in Australia. Earthcache 2 is in the nation's capital in Australia, Canberra. The third one is also in the nation's capital. Then I set up at least 2, I think 3 in Colorado, because I was living in Colorado half of my life. And we set them up. And the deal was, let's just set them up, those ones out there and see what happens. And they got inundated by people saying, we want to set up Earthcaches.
Right.
So that's kind of how it started. That first meeting, we developed guidelines. And that's how it all started. Pretty.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Here's
one of the pictures, Gary, of the area. I think it's kind of cool because this was one little nighttime one, but what a great area. What a great spot.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Earthcache 1 is an amazing location, I got to tell you. As a geologist, people from around the world, geologists from around the world visit that location.
Wow.
So it's kind of cool. Kangaroos go and swim on that beach there, by the way. So
do they really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's.
I don't know how many favorites it has nowadays, but it should be visited by more people, because most people who visit it have no idea the history behind visiting Earthcache 1.
Earthcache 1. Yeah. And we were talking before the show, and we'll get into we're going to get into the new hiding guidelines here in a little while, but we'll eventually get there. One of the ones that you did, and I don't know, Jesse, if this is on the list of the ones that you have found back in your days in Colorado, but it was called Mica City.
Yeah, Mica City. Yep.
Yeah, which looks again like a really cool. I don't know if you were able to get to that one while you were living in Colorado, but interesting. Looking at all the people who have posted photos, and we'll get into photos here in a minute, but it's kind of interesting. Do you remember finding that spot and going, yeah, Earthcache?
Yeah, it was kind of fun because we decided we were going to set up some Earthcaches, so we went looking for places. And when you live on the Front Range in Colorado, it's just 5-minute drive, and you could find 1,000 places to put Earthcaches because the geology is so exposed. What is cool about Mica City is that it's a site where right against the road you've got access to really big books of mica, and there's actually 2 sites. One of them where the books are small, and one of them where the books are large.
Wow!
So you're looking and say, well, here are 2 things within a stone's throw of each other. Why are they different? And that's really the lesson. Yeah. So there was that one. We set up another one in a different canyon. So for those people who don't know, Colorado, half of it's flat and the other half of it's this huge mountain range, the Rocky Mountains, and the boundary between them, the rocks are all tilted up, and the boundary between them, and there's a whole pile of mining that has taken place along the boundary. And on one side of the boundary, the mining is coal and associated minerals with coal, uranium, for example. And on the other side of the boundary, it's all a whole range of different metallic minerals. So within a very short distance, I could find different places to set up earth caches, whether it's about the coal mining or whether it was about the fossils in the rocks or whether it was about the erosion of the canyons or the minerals. So it was a magic place to set up earth caches. But we didn't want to flood the world with them. You know, it was like we started with like 6, I think, and let the world start.
That one was the first in Colorado, wasn't it? The Mica City one?
Yeah, that was the first one in the States, Mica City. There was one in Boulder Canyon at Boulder Canyon Falls. But again, because of safety reasons, we had to shut it down because there was a flood and the trail to the site got wiped out and stuff. But yeah.
No, it's very cool. And I something we'll definitely want to talk about is and we talked about before the show too, was the number of geocaches. I mean, the number of earth caches. I think we sort of came to the conclusion is probably a good amount, or I mean, it can be added on to, but I think that the growth of earth caches seems to be a good pace, because it seems like we're not, they're not like what, sorry, don't want to bash on waymarking, but there's millions and millions and millions of waymarks, but that's not the point. That's not the point for earth caches, is to have. And in fact, I think you probably were part of that setting the guidelines. Like, look, there's an earth cache at this spot already with the education that is needed. We don't need somebody else, unless there's some compelling reason. There was not really a reason to have somebody come along and go, well, this is the same earth cache, but from a different angle. It's like, nah, you don't want that.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And the guidelines, the guidelines that we originally set up was more about keeping the language at a level so kids could understand it. We set up guidelines about getting permission. That was important because remember, we were trying to placate the National Park Service and the Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management as well. We're trying to make sure that they were happy with the guidelines, because if it wasn't for us doing that with those services, no caching would be allowed to take place in any of those lands because they were all against caching. Whereas now national parks actually create their own caches, right? So, so it was quite, the guidelines were set up. It was more about the access and the permission than about logging tasks. The original Earth Cache guidelines had no logging tasks. There was no logging required.
Wow.
That was something that came later.
Right.
So, we set up the first, sorry to ramble.
No,
Gary.
go ahead. You're good. Keep going.
We set up those first ones. I'm going to say, well, there was 3 in Australia, 2 in Colorado, at least. There may have been a third. So let's call it 6. We put them out there. And my goal was, if we had 500 caches, earth caches set up within 12 months, that would be amazing. Within the first 6 months, we had 1,500.
Wow.
So it really, really exploded.
That's awesome.
And it exploded for a couple of reasons. One, because I think people saw that this was a way to show people cool things rather than just, like lampposts.
Yeah.
I'm not damning the folks that love their lampposts. But for me, they're not a turn on. That was the first thing. And the second thing is, at the same time, I realized that because there's no container with no trinkets inside, we needed some process so people felt that they were being rewarded.
Right.
So we set up the Earthcache Masters program that said, if you find 3, we will send you a bronze pin. If you find 5 but create one, we'll send you a silver pin, and so on.
Yeah.
So my wife Jen packed pins in envelopes. Like, we think, okay, we're going to send 100 pins out, And I think at the end of that, sending physical pins out, we'd send out 30,000 pins.
Oh my God.
Wow,
Awesome.
that is amazing.
So that really pushed them along.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But let me just mention the bad side about this whole process.
Sure.
Earthcaches, when waymarking was set up,
Yeah.
were taken out of geocaching and put into waymarking.
Were they really?
They were. So they spent a little doldrum time over in waymarking with me complaining on a fairly regular basis to Groundspeak, to geocaching.com.
Yep.
And it wasn't, I think it was maybe 12 months they were there. Then 12 months later, a decision was made at geocaching.com to allow them to come back as long as they had some educational logging task. So that's where the logging task came in.
Oh.
So they were allowed to come back. Those caches that existed had to develop logging tasks. So I had to go back to Earthcache 1, for example, and develop a logging task that was associated with Earthcache 1. And the other caches did. And then, so we had this like rapid growth and then stagnate, if anything, die.
Yeah.
And then after they got out of waymarking and back into the game proper, then they exploded again.
Yeah. Well, and that's something we talked about. And we're going to talk about more and get your opinion and your thoughts on, since you're, you mentioned before you're no longer part of the Geological Society, but you have such great knowledge of everything. It'll be interesting when we get to we'll talk about here in a little bit about the hiding requirements, but we've all struggled, and Jesse and I've had multiple conversations about the logging requirements, and I Jesse, I want to get your thought on this, but there are many Earthcaches that I think have really dialed in perfect logging requirements. I think that, and I'm so happy with those. Typically, I'll give them a favorite point too, because I'm really happy with their, they've asked the proper. To me, they've asked, and I have been able to ascertain the proper logging. But we all know that there are plenty of them out there that don't have that. So what are your, when you set up an Earthcache, you've set up many, what's your total now on Earthcache?
I'm not a number counter, so I'm going to say I've read between 5,000 and 10,000 Earthcache submissions in my day.
Wow. When you were back. Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of submissions.
Yeah.
But let me just say that the original intent of Earthcaches was to take people who had no earth science background, take them to a place like something like the thing behind me, and explain to them in very simple terms what they are looking at.
Right.
When the logging tasks were then added, it was, okay, what task can we set that shows that you have learnt something about that place?
Right.
So let's take the second Earthcache ever set up, which is called Earthcache to Woolshed Creek.
Right.
It takes people to the first place that Silurian aged fossils were found in Australia.
Oh, wow.
It's as terrible as by the big freeway near an airport. We're not talking a beautiful, site like the thing behind me here.
Sure.
The logging task is, how big are the fossils? It's that simple. So we take them and say, this is important because this was the place that someone recognized some fossils and realized that the rocks were of this age, which in geology, that's kind of important to understand how old the rocks are. And the logging task is measure the size of the fossils and tell us the size of the fossils. Such a simple task. One task.
Yeah.
And it doesn't require you to look anything up. So I go to the site, I can read the notes. They've now put a sign up. and I can do that one task of measuring the size of the fossils, and I can log. To me, that's an awesome Earthcache, and I'm not just saying it because I created it. That's what when we set up Earthcaches originally, that was the plan. You do a small task that isn't how many steps did you walk down to get to it, because that's not teaching you anything. But when you're there, what do you see? What is it you see? What can you see? A mineral in a rock? How big is the crystal? How big is the fossil? How big is the crack? So something that shows that you've been there and maybe you've learned something.
And then Gary, from what you're saying too, is it one of those things you're thinking people should be able to do when they're there on site?
Correct.
Rather than like having to do a lot of homework or research afterwards.
Correct.
Some people do a lot of,
I will admit that I think the Earthcaches that I've visited, certainly in the last 10 years, have gone way beyond that. And I see the frustration with people when they're looking to do an Earthcache and they've got like 6 pages of notes and not 1 or 2 logging tasks, but there's 10 different things they got to do. I see the frustration with people, and that was never the original intent of Earthcaches. It wasn't for you to go and do your capstone high school project on earth science at a site. That was never the intention. And I think it worked against Earthcaches. I think if the very first Earthcache you ever went to was one of those great long-winded Earthcaches with lots of logging tasks, you'd probably never visit an Earthcache again. And that's sad,
right,
because there's so many fantastic things that you can go and see where that isn't the case of the way the cache was developed.
To kind of piggyback on that, I've seen other things that turn people off from Earthcaches, and I run mine differently, but you go to, whether it's 10 questions or not, that one, obviously, some people are going to be like, I'm not going through this effort. I can just go down the street and find a cache. But I've also seen the ones that kind of have ambiguous answers. So you leave from the site that you may not be returning to, not knowing if you got it right or not. And somebody mentioned that earlier in the chat room too. But if that's your one cache for the day, or the one cache in that area or in that state as you're driving through, you don't want to leave somewhere and go, I have no idea whether I got this right or not. You should have an idea. It should be something decently like, I either got this right or wrong. It's going to be enough to show that I was there. And we know, we don't have to get into the stories of it, but we know there's some Earthcache owners out there that are turds and are just mean. That's very rare, but we've seems like several of us run into it. You're like, that's wrong. Well, try to work with a person. That's my approach to it. I work with somebody. It was obvious they were there. They're not supposed to be a professor, so that kind of turns some people off to it. Probably 99% of Earthcache owners are great and they're nice about it. But if that first one you get to has an ambiguous answer, or you send it in and it's the guy's back like, nope, that's wrong, delete. Well, that's going to turn you off. You just lost the cache, right? Made a good experience a bad experience. So there's those things that come into it.
I people used to ask me back in the day when I was reviewing. I was the only reviewer of Earthcaches.
Yeah.
What level should the language be? And I would say that of a 14-year-old. And people would say, well, what's that? And say, listen, look at it this way. If your grandmother can read it and understand it, then you're in pretty good shape, knowing that chances are your grandmother hasn't got a degree in geology.
Right.
Yeah. And when the logging task came along, again, it was, do something. It wasn't about counting steps or how many times do you see, how many bolts are there in a sign, because they're not about the earth. It needs to be a simple logging task that shows that the person has been there, but maybe learned something.
Yes.
And that's what it should be.
And I appreciate what you're saying, Gary, because confessing some of my Earthcache sins, just to be honest, is sometimes like I've gone on vacation. I've taken a look, so many, questions out there. I've taken the pictures. And then sometimes because of that, like I don't log the Earthcaches.
I'm terrible about it.
Yeah. Until I actually logged a few recently where it was a year or two later.
Right.
On that one. And for me, I was like, that was a cool location. I want to relive that. but you're making me feel better. Like my Earthcache sins are being forgiven at this moment. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
The Godfather says you're okay now. You're okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm
I would say to someone developing an Earthcache now that if a person can't actually log it using the app or Cachely or whatever their favorite tool is, if they can't actually log it when they are right there on site, then your logging tasks are too complicated. That's what I would. That would be the advice I'd give people. Do you want a favorite point for your cache? Well, having 8 logging tasks and 6 pages of notes ain't going to help you, right? No matter how wonderful the site is, it just isn't. You
know, Jesse, you're. I look at yours a lot because I'm serious though. You have really good. And I know you've kind of developed it a little bit over time. Like I was mentioning earlier, it's like do you recall, Jesse, how many Earthcaches you've published? Do you remember?
Yeah, I just haven't looked at it for you. I've done 63 of them, but that's again, I was in Colorado, as Gary knows. You can throw a rock,
in Colorado
and anything and hit a geological site, right? So they're all over the place. And I took advantage of the fact that I travel a lot. So if I saw something when I traveled, it was one of those I couldn't hide a physical cache there, but I could hide it. And it didn't always work, right? Because sometimes the question would come back, what about this? I'm like, well, I don't know. We'll just scrap that one because I didn't get enough information. But a lot of times it worked out. So I was able to publish them based on that. And I always wanted mine. And we've talked about it many times, so I don't want to waste time on it. But my goal is for people to be able to find mine, not DNF mine. And I will go to a lot of effort and I will chat with people and try to draw the information out. Encourage people. No, you were there. We can figure this out. This is not supposed to be you're not supposed to F this geology paper. This is supposed to be, you get credit for this just for being, it's completion. You get credit for being there. And it should be. Now we'll get into it later, but I do have some that are more difficult, but that's very rare. That was just because the option was open and available. But most of mine are ones that I don't want anybody to DNF them. I just really don't. They were there. Now if somebody wasn't there, okay, move on. But if they were there, they've got a picture too, so that proves they were there. Answer something, and we can have a conversation. I know you're there. Just please log it. Don't DNF an Earthcache unless you couldn't get to it, which in Colorado that is possible. Actually, there's a lot of times you just can't get to one. But you should have tasks that are. Somebody should come away from there feeling better, not feeling dumb. That's just not. That's not geocaching. That's not Earthcaching.
Spot on, Jesse. And I would say this as a cache owner. Why would you want to create all that work for yourself by having so many logging tasks and having to go backwards and forwards with people if you've got a simple, easy logging task for people to do that shows that they were there and shows that they've learned something, you're on a winner.
Mm-hmm.
I have lots and lots of people visit my Earthcaches. Many of the times it requires such a short email response back to them because they've had to measure the direction of a dike or the size of a crystal or the size of a fossil. And it's, yep, perfect, rather than having to go through, I don't know. I don't believe in creating work for myself. I don't believe it needs to be a chore for the person visiting.
Yeah. You have a story, Gary, we got to get to now because you've been doing a lot of, you've traveled a lot. And now you do these, doing some tours with folks. But talking about the logging requirements, and you don't have to mention the Earthcache you were at because we don't have to go that route. But tell everybody about what it was like. Because one thing for yourself to try to log Earthcache, but let people know about the time you got to a spot because you'd have your little group with you.
Yeah.
And you're watching 20 people try to log this Earthcache and you're like, oh my gosh, what was it like to watch those people try to log it?
Right. So, it's really fascinating because, to start with, I'm a geologist. So I visit and I have the Earthcache notes and I look at the Earthcache notes and I read through it and I got a pretty good idea what I'm supposed to be looking for. Right. But when you're with people who are not earth scientists, and you're with a group of people, it's really interesting to see the dynamics between them about how they're going to log an Earthcache. And some of the Earthcaches, dead easy, right? They got simple logging tasks, fine. But the number of times I've seen people so frustrated, and I come back to that, the questions are ambiguous. The answers, it's like, are they asking this? Is this what they're asking? So they're not clear about what they're asking for. To see a group go through that process is really amazing. And a lot of the times you find that there are a few people. So I take groups of people, 15, 20 people. We go to Iceland, Hawaii, etc. And it's a wonderful experience. And you have people with everything from newbie caches through to people who've been doing it longer than I have been. You will find that there is a person who is the Earthcache, expert.
Right.
And they might have all of the Earthcaches printed out with all of the logging requirements. And they'll get there and say, right, the logging requirement for this cache, before anyone's read any of the notes, the logging requirement is this, 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 and this. So this is the stuff we need to find out.
Right. So they're
sometimes just reading those questions, I'm sitting there and saying, what the hell? Like, as a geologist, I don't understand what they're asking. And you can see the frustration build up with people. And I see when that happens, some of the group just turn away. They just,
which is,
we're done.
That's sad.
Where's the next traditional?
Oh, yeah. You just don't want to see that. We'll get into the hiding guidelines here in a few minutes, but yeah. So Gary, you've got a group you're taking. Is it a group or you're going to England in a few days and a couple of weeks?
We are, yeah. I leave next week. The group arrives on Saturday, and we are caching across southern England. We're visiting earth caches. These are not earth caching trips, but obviously there's an earth cache flavor. You can't help yourself.
Absolutely.
We're doing some typical. We're doing some of the amazing locations, like White Cliffs of Dover. We're caching at Stonehenge. We're going to castles. We're going to the Jurassic Coast where people they're actually going to be able to collect fossils while we're there. So it's a caching trip across with having a geologist and a physical geographer, a guy named Barry who's co-leading with me.
Right.
We take caches and it's a group caching trip across southern England.
Wow, that's awesome.
And it will be beyond good. Is all I can say.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sausage rolls and all that good stuff, and beer and warm beer, but beer nonetheless.
Yeah, that's awesome. We talked about before. Jesse and I know have discussed going to Iceland, and then I see the note from you is like, "Oh, we're going to Iceland," and it's like, "Yes." Oh no, the timing. Timing is always tough. But
taking a group to Iceland in late July and into August, and then we've got a trip to the volcanoes of Hawaii in November.
Oh, nice.
All caching trips. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
I
love the photos and
Yeah,
I love the photos and the information. We can kind of live vicariously through but it's available. I mean, do you have is there a place for future trips?
There is. If the geocachetalk.com is the website I run, and there's actually in the top line, the top bar navigation, there's a thing that says geocaching trips, and you can click there and you can see all the trips in the future.
Okay, cool.
So the trips this year, I think we've got a couple of places left for Hawaii in November. We are doing Iceland in 25. We're doing Iceland. Oh, we're doing Australia. We're going to Earthcache 1 and Earthcache 2, the original Earth caches in Australia in November 25.
Yeah. Hey, Gary, just to check, you don't have to be a geologist, right? Or an earth scientist to go on these trips.
No, not at all. In fact, you're better off not being. Then we can just we could talk at the right level then, right? But we do have occasionally a geologist will come. I should point out I run trips. I'm retired. I run trips because I love running trips, and I run trips for teachers and teachers of all levels. But I'm also running geocaching trips.
Yeah.
we go to similar places because they're places that I know and the geology really well and love it. The geocaching ones, we just have we have a slightly different focus. So yeah. So come along and check the trips out. Keep the price as low as possible because I'm not trying to make
gouge.
money. That's the bottom line. People say, "Oh, I can go to Iceland with a tour company." Go right ahead. National Geographic charges $60,000 for a week in Hawaii.
Well, they probably have a whole lot less fun and no geocaches.
That's right.
Right. No geocaches.
Yeah, there you go. You don't want to do that. You want to go to these other trips, but okay, so we're keeping an eye out. And if you have any questions,
we have
put
some
them
questions
in the chat room.
but we need to hit the guidelines before we hit the questions.
Yeah, we're going to go over the guidelines and then we'll kind of but I'm saying if you have any questions, put them in the chat room. So, all right, so here's the new hiding guidelines, and let's get y'all's thoughts on this. So per Earthcache, here are the Earthcache guidelines now that they've changed. Assume finders have only a basic knowledge of geology, contain non-technical explanations of what finders will see at the site.
Mm-hmm.
In addition, the GSA and the Geocaching HQ are making these suggestions to Earthcache hiders. Limit logging tasks to 3, plus photo if desired. And they're saying, again, the primary goal of an Earthcache should be to highlight a unique feature. Be mindful that asking too many questions may result in an Earthcache that is more complicated than necessary. And then the other one was limit logging tasks at the top of the caching description, which is nice. Instead of reading through all of the information and then getting to the logging task, they want the logging task moved to the top. This allows finders to know right away what to keep in mind as they're reading the lesson and viewing the location. I think those are key notes, and I think they should have gone a little further, in my opinion, on some of that, because I appreciate when I get y'all's opinion on this, but I do appreciate when I have a sort of a description of what, sort of a technical, I guess, description of what I'm looking at, because we can look at a location and we go, okay, this is cool. What am I, what is it I'm learning here or wanting to learn? And somebody has taken the time to give me sort of some basics about, okay, this is an example of, the earth uplifting and we're seeing this, that, and the other. You're like, okay, cool. But in plain
language.
Yeah.
Technical information, but in plain language is the key.
Right. And I don't need the whole book. I don't need just, a couple paragraphs here, Give me the highlights. Show me the highlight, But what are y'all's first thoughts on this? I
got to tell you, I like them because one of the lenses I think about, and I appreciate what Gary was saying, it's you get new cachers in the game, and how many new cachers they start with traditionals because maybe multis are too hard, mysteries are too hard, earth caches are too hard. But to me, this is a great way to get people who are just starting off caching to get a valuable lesson, go to a cool location, and get into earth caches. So from my standpoint, I love these because I think the value of geocaching is bringing a community together to explore this and enjoy things. And of course, I love the outdoors. So I got to say, I love the changes.
I agree with all the changes, except for it does raise some questions, which we kind of talked about before the show started. But I think one of the ones that
bring them up too,
as a cache owner, it's important to me is a photo at the scene. And I don't need them to take photos and pretty pictures, which I always want to, because you usually get to see awesome stuff, right? But if I have that photo that shows they're there, it helps me as a cache owner when they have trouble, because I can go, well, I know for a fact they're there. I'm going to make sure that I can talk them into feeling like they've got enough to find that log. But if they don't send a photo and they get the answers all wrong, it makes it hard for me to go ask them, because I email back and answer follow-up questions, and I've emailed people back like 5 times before that, like, I don't think I did enough to find. I'm like, no, you did. You were there. You did enough. You looked at stuff. You did it. Let's talk about it. But if they got that photo, I have that confidence of going, it's not somebody trying to cheese them in, right? Like armchair log, because it's possible. You can look them up or you can share answers with people. We know people all do that. It's more rare on Earthcache, I think, than other ones. But and then so to me, I like that. They should keep the photo in there. But the 3 logging task is interesting. The questions at the top, that is really good, because even though Earth caches are usually made better on average than some of the other ones. I've seen traditional caches with no description, literally no description. They're published that way.
Right.
You're not going to get away with that with Earth cache, right? You can't. So, but the questions at the top are good because you can see immediately, this is something out of my depth. I may not want to try that today. I don't have time to do it. Or I think I can do this. And then you get into a full description. So I think I've had to scroll before with those really long ones and scroll. And I'm trying to pick the questions out. And maybe you miss a question. They'll have questions in different sections. And it gets crazy. So cleaning that up is huge. But I'll leave it to Gary for the level, because that opens up a whole different can of worms for me. So
I think this is a great step forward. I wasn't associated with any of this decision making, but to me, this just makes total sense. It just pulls Earthcaches back to what the original concept was.
Yeah.
Simple language. Logging tasks, there were no logging tasks at the start. Logging tasks were added later on.
Right.
And it didn't need, it wasn't about having a huge list of logging tasks. So
right.
3 is a maximum, and I would be tempted to say to people, you want a really good Earthcache, have 1 damn logging task.
Right.
Putting them at the top so people know what they're up to. And if you can't keep your description about what's happening at that there to 1 page, there's something wrong.
Yes.
Have it as a page and then have a list of references that people can go to if they're interested in finding more information. But 6 or 7 pages of information is way, way, way too much.
Yeah.
So I think these changes to the guidelines, or these suggestions to the guidelines, are spot on and moving Earthcaches back in the direction that the original concept was. So,
excellent.
So, Gary,
they're great.
Because I'm that guy and I love to stir stuff up, let's get an official ruling from the godfather of geocaches.
That's right.
If
the
it's
godfather.
14-year-old level, 3 questions, and they should be able to do it on scene. What do you think the maximum difficulty a geocache should be under these guidelines?
Difficulty, not terrain.
Obviously, terrain could be anything, right?
Terrain can be anything.
Kayak, you could do anything for that. You can scuba.
If I had my way,
here it comes.
A 2.
A 2. Okay. So there is precedent for that, because events are the same way. Terrain can be anything, but they've locked in events at a 1 difficulty.
Yeah.
So it's not that they couldn't do that if they chose to do it.
Right, but I think Earthcaches just have to have the overlay of the caching system on the top of it.
Yeah,
and I think that's where that comes down to. But to me, it needs to be your kid should be able to do the Earthcache.
I don't disagree with you. I agree with you, and I've hidden ones that are way beyond that, but it's because what the rule said. I went with what the rule said, but I always thought it was kind of speaking out of both sides of your mouth, saying it should be easy for anybody to do, but also we have an option for a 5 difficulty. I'm like, that didn't even make any sense to me, but
right.
Maybe they're going to eventually go that way, and this is laying the groundwork for it, but somebody's going to complain no matter what they do. So people are going to be mad if they do it. People are going to be mad if they don't do it. So we don't have to make
the guidelines for Earthcaches there's been an evolution of the guidelines over time. And I think the guideline changes, some of them have been made in the past to stop stupidity, people putting in requests for photographs that you've got to, it needs to be from here to here and here of your face. Like why? There's no point.
That's crazy.
So some of the guidelines were due to that. I think all of the geo-awares get together and have a conversation about things every year and talk about stuff. And I think they're, pulling stuff back because not everybody, but some cache developers have just gone too far in earth caches and taken away the fun for people, and they're basically pulling that back. I think it's wonderful. I commend them for doing so.
Well, I mean, imagine if, not a GeoWare, but if a regular geocache reviewer could go, you know what? We have too many LPCs in this town. I'm not publishing that one. That would change geocaching.
That would help.
I mean, imagine they're like, you know what?
This is
One,
not
you
the
didn't get
experience.
permission, which you have to for an Earthcache.
Yeah.
And two, we have 10 of these caches in town. Find something different to do. It would change. That's why Earth caches are so. And one thing that people complain about is getting an Earthcache published, which you don't have time to get into, but getting Earthcache published. But that's also what keeps them unique and not overly saturated and higher quality, is because you can't put out 100 of them in the same area that are the exact same thing, like you can with other cache types.
Exactly. And you know, you got to remember that Earth cache reviewers are cache reviewers.
Right.
So, you know, they take on a considerable extra load as volunteers, because to review an Earth cache is a hell of a lot harder than reviewing a log post. Right? So, you know, they take it a lot on. Every single one of them that I have ever dealt with have been just fantastic at what they do. I understand people's frustration, but I think with these guidelines, which I think simplify the process, it will make it easier for you to get an Earthcache published.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't need to get too easy, though. It really doesn't, because the saturation issue is what screws up everything, right? Like, it needs to have some. I would love the Earthcache to keep their standards. You know, you have to prove that you got permission. You have to have an actual lesson that somebody's reviewed. I mean, there's more to it than just putting a container out.
It's got to be an Earthcache too, right? It's got to be. I mean, one of the things I think, Jesse, that will sort of maybe help hedge that a little bit is the fact that, and I appreciate the Earthcache reviewers will, and I've had a couple, you know, where I've like, this is an Earth, you know, here I'm submitting an Earthcache, and like, that doesn't really fit exactly what we want in an Earthcache. And, I go back, I look, I go, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. But if you're honest with yourself, like I've submitted ones that got rejected, and they should have been. I got lazy, you know, or I was just repeating some other stuff that I had before, regurgitating in a new area of the country or whatever, and, you know, I got it kicked back, and I was like, you know, of course you don't ever want anything rejected, but if you look at it objectively, you're like, yeah, you know what, you're right. So good on you for that. Good on you for catching that. I was being lazy. It's a good thing they weren't being lazy too. You'd have a, you know, lower quality one out there. So that's a good thing. When they rejected it, and every Earthcache reviewer that I've dealt with, which I've dealt with several in different parts of the country or whatever, every one of them has been. Now, granted, if your attitude that you push in is with attitude you get back, right? But every one of them wants to publish the Earthcache, and they want to help you do it. And if you say, look, I'm struggling with this, can you help me? They can't write it for you, because that's not their, you know, they don't get paid to do that, but they will generally try to help you, push you in the right direction. They don't ever just go away, loser. So,
yeah. Do you think too, Gary, that when there was that whole into way marking and out of way marking, do you think that there was and again, this is probably still a good thing, even though I know Jesse's saying that this is kind of a little bit of a dichotomy, which is the fact that when it came back, you kind of really wanted it to not have, you wanted it to be just like a geocache. I mean, you wanted it to not have any. Now there's possibilities that you could, although, I mean, Owen from KC mentioned that you couldn't do an Earthcache fizzy, you know, and those might become more difficult over time.
But I mean, really getting those published anyway. Yeah. Not many places can you publish an Earthcache fizzy challenge.
No.
That's just got to be a personal goal. And it's not true, actually. It would be easier to do an Earthcache fizzy. It would be whatever was available on Earthcaches. If it only went up to 2, but all terrains, that would be the fizzy for that cache.
It would be done. Yeah, that's true. You're right. Point. That would be it
would actually be easier. But there's a couple of questions. You want to hit those before we run out of time, too?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think Gary's already answered them, but might as well hit it anyway, right?
Yeah, sounds good.
But it's valid. And I think a lot of this is going to help. So you can take a photo of the log for any physical cache. You can take a photo for a webcam or virtual. Earthcache is the only cache type where getting the smiley is 100% out of your hands. And now we kind of already touched about that. Like, it should be easy questions to answer and not ambiguous. And then you're going to have those butt owners every once in a while that are just turds about stuff. But in general, but you still can leave from an Earthcache not knowing, did I get that right or not? So that's a valid concern, and nothing's going to fix that, right? It's something, there's a delayed process. I don't think any guidelines would fix that other than making some instant checker thing, which would be way, way more complicated and outside of what anything needs to be.
Right. People should be able to log an Earthcache and should log Earthcaches even with no response from the cache owner. You've been to the Earthcache, you can log it.
Yeah.
The owner, if your answer you've sent to an owner is just way off,
Yeah.
then the owner can then get back to you and say, hey, like this wasn't there,
right.
Yeah.
You really should just be proving they're there. Yeah, you're not trying to catch somebody wrong. That's not the goal of an Earthcache.
Right. This next one's an interesting one.
Yeah.
There are Earthcaches out there that require you to have some other piece of equipment. This one with litmus paper that Creepy Leech is asking, and I've been to ones. There's one in Hawaii that we go to that you need an instrument to measure the salinity of the water. As long as that is up there, and that requirement should be up there because it's a logging task, should be at the top of the page, I have no problem with those Earthcaches.
No.
That's what would make an Earthcache a difficulty 2, in my opinion.
And I think that's as long as you're giving people ahead of time. Like, perfect example, parallel for this would be a gadget cache, where you show up and you need a battery to operate it. Well, that should be clearly obvious on the cache page before you get there with the description that says you need AA batteries to do it. That's a good example. If I don't have AA batteries, I'm not going to go to that cache because I'm not prepared to do it right there. But now you shouldn't be 8 paragraphs in and they go, oh yeah, check the litmus. What? No, I don't carry that with me.
That should be at the top.
My car.
In bold.
Just like Gary said, that should be very bolded at the top and obvious in the beginning, because that is not normal. You do see one of those, and I've done one where they need not a clinometer. Okay, well, look at that. I got that right in the first guess. We had to have one. Well, somebody did, and we all went together to go do that Earthcache because somebody had one, access to one.
Right.
That was cool. It made it a fun experience.
Right.
But I would hate to have gotten there, driven all the way there. It was in right outside Rocky Mountain National Park in the canyon, and not known that and had to drive back late. That would have been annoying, right? But as long as they make it obvious, I think I'm good to go with that. As a matter of fact, I love when I see one of those because it's on my list to then get a group together and go find.
Right. I have no problem with the equipment. It needs to be upfront, really obvious that you need it. So when someone opens the cache page, they can say, I can't do that one because I don't have the bit of equipment, and they're not doing the traveling. And that's what would make it a harder cache rating if that was something that you're worried about.
So Nathan asks, he said, I've noticed it's much harder to get an EC published these days. I'm curious if people are still attempting to submit them. How many Earthcaches are submitted today that are denied? And I doubt you know that stat off the top of your head, but there are limiting factors, right? They cut down on saturation. There's certain things that they don't allow now. You mentioned that earlier.
Correct. Like waterfall, there are some things, and if you go to the Earthcache page on the Geological Society of America's page, so that's geosociety.org, and you look for the Earthcache page. There used to be a list of the caches, the phenomenon type. Waterfalls is one of them. Glacial erratics, because if you live in Maine, every rock in my yard is a glacial erratic. I
remember that one.
Tell us the size of the glacial erratic. It's like, holy crap! There's like, I got 19 billion of them on my 8 acres. So they've been cut out.
That was one. I remember that one.
Yeah. Is it more difficult to get a cache publish, an Earthcache publish? I would say no, it isn't. And with these change to guidelines, it will make it easier for everybody.
I like that.
I put
It does take more to publish an Earth cache than most other cache types. That's fair to say.
Yes, it does.
And at the same point, it's more reviewed, so it's going to be higher quality.
Right,
as a
absolutely.
result of it. Yeah.
And it should be if you're thinking about national parks or locations where Earth caches are, you don't want every Yahoo sending somebody where they shouldn't be, right? So a lot of them are in protected areas that they intentionally don't have physical caches for that reason. They don't want people trampling over stuff. So an Earth cache is allowed there, but you still have to have permission and not take them to areas where they shouldn't be, like offshore where they shouldn't be in an area like that.
Yeah.
You should not have an Earth cache in a national park unless you've got permission. And if you put one in a national park without permission, the national park finds out, it'll be immediately archived. And what's more, as some of our caching friends have found out in the past, every single one of your cache could end up being Earth caches could end up being archived.
Wow.
Yeah.
Especially if you lie about it. Oh yeah, I got permission, and we find out that you didn't.
You didn't.
That's just a complete no-no.
Yeah,
well, that brings such a bad name to geocaching. That that's like a virtual bomb scare. You don't need that.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey Gary, so I learned from this. LPC and guardrail caches of Earth caches are waterfalls and glacial erratics, right?
Correct.
There you go.
And on here too. So for folks like Nathan who are thinking and inspired from the show to hide in Earth cache, what recommendations do you have for them?
Oh, good question.
My recommendation would be to look at what other Earth caches are around the area that you're wanting to place an Earth cache in. Get a bit of an idea of the topics that those Earth caches are covering and try to find something that is unique from those.
Perfect.
That would be my advice. But, a simple Earth caches can be simple, but it may require you to do your research to find out exactly what it is you're looking at, and then the time that it takes to then make that simple. And I don't know how to explain it, but it's like geologists, we're always talking about watering the science down to explain it to people.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to water the science down without making it inaccurate. But you should be able to do that. Earth caches are supposed to be simple. So if you see something, oh, look, there's like a big crack in the ground with a tree growing in it. Like the lesson there is about how tree roots can be used to create erosion, right? So, it can be that simple. But if there are 4 other Earth caches that does a similar thing in an area, then pick something different from that to look at.
Yep. No, that's good.
So somebody asked, how will this help existing Earth caches? I don't think it's going to affect any ones that are already out there, other than people will tend to go towards the newer, the newer, cleaner ones than the older ones.
Yeah, although I got to tell you, I'm kind of hoping that people with existing caches will look at those guidelines and make adjustments if they've got lots and lots and lots of logging tasks.
Yeah.
I live in an unreal world with that. I think it's an unreal expectation of mine. But I would like to think that people will realize that they need to pull those things back. I have, he says, with a smile, I have contacted some cache owners when I've been on trips and I've seen people really struggling with their caches. I have contacted some cache owners and say, you know what, this one's over the top.
Yeah.
And I normally get a terse email back, but like, who the hell are you? Who the hell are you for saying this? I get it.
I'll tell you who I am, bud.
Now it just so happens.
Now you need to respond back, Gary. You are the godfather of Earth caches.
Well, to me, it's like that. They don't know me from clay, but at least it made me feel good, right?
Right.
I said something. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we did see something that reins Earth caches back in from some of the ridiculous stuff that's out there.
Yeah, I hope so.
I mean, I think if that's the original intent, which obviously it is, if that's the original intent and they want them going forward, now I think they could easily grandfather in the old ones, right?
Right.
And say, from now on out, this is kind of what we're looking for. There's no reason to have anything above a 2 or 3, whatever it is. That's the intent of this. So keep them like that for the future. You know what I mean? I could see them doing that to try to keep the original intent of these.
No, that's true.
It looks like I haven't paid my power bill and I'm in the dark here.
Oh, no.
That's okay. Well, we can hear you. You're kind of frozen on the screen, but that's okay. We're kind of at a wrap up point anyway. So, I guess let's take a moment as we're at the end of the show now. And again, thank you, Gary, so much for being on. We really appreciate. I enjoy. We need to do some more as time goes on because we did an Earthcache show a while back, and we've kind of neglected to do one recently. But I do appreciate that the logging requirements are changed, and hopefully for the better. I think over time, I think we'll see the benefit of the new ones. So, John, what are your thoughts as we wrap up?
Man, Gary, it's been a pleasure, and to confess another Earthcache sin before the show ends, I have not hidden one. This leaves me in a spot where I need to hide one. I know.
John, no
Gary
pizza for you.
Disappointment on that one.
No pizza for you.
No, I need pizza to be creative, Gary.
No,
I need it.
Go hide one, then get a pizza.
Oh man, that means I probably won't have one for at least like 3 weeks while it goes to get reviewed. But But Gary, thank you so much. I'm inspired to hide one, and I definitely appreciate it because as part of this game, it's just the cool thing is just having Earthcaches, and I appreciate all of your advocacy in creating them and then bringing them back from waymarking as well too. Because thank you for doing that, because to me they're just such a fun part of the game.
So, John, I'm not going to let you get away with that. First of all, I want you to vow to create 3, because we barely touched on it tonight, but there is 3 levels of achievements for Earthcaches. We didn't really touch on it. It's a whole other show.
Yeah, we didn't get into that. That's another show.
So I want you to vow live on the air to hide 3, to publish 3.
Scout's honor. Okay.
Well, you got to find a certain many, which you found enough. But if you also publish 3, you can get to that, that top level of the badging for it.
Yeah, I got to level
and
up.
I think this summer, when you and I meet up for that cache, absolutely. I do believe that's an area that would be good for finding a few spots.
Ooh,
so
yeah, you're right.
You got to vow to get 3. And then Gary, I just want to thank you again for coming on. I mean, it's so cool. You don't get to talk to many people that invented a cache type.
I know. That's awesome.
And I like your perspective on it's supposed to be something that's generally accessible to the public. And, we all, me included, I'm just as guilty as everybody else. If it's open and an option, we find a way to make it, right? So we find a way to make something more difficult than it has to be. And for me, that makes me want to rein it in and rethink how I publish Earthcaches.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate your kind words and comments. It's fascinating that it's 20 years and that there's still passion out there for Earthcaches. And all I can say is, if you want to have fun with me, come and check us out at the Geo Etc. site. Go and have a look at the geocaching trips and join one of our geocaching trips, because we do have a lot of fun, and it's a super way to meet other caches and meet people who are interested in Earthcaching, people from such a variety walk of life. They're great. They're great fun. And hopefully I'll see a Gary or a John or a Jesse on one of those trips in the near future.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. Sooner than later. We definitely, Iceland is top of my list, but the other trips sound amazing too. I love, I've not been out to Stonehenge. I'd love to go there sometime, but anyway, for another show. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate everybody, all the comments and all the questions. Been wonderful. And, again, Gary, it's been a pleasure, and, we will talk soon, and, love to hear and see, how your trips go, and, keep in touch. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks everybody. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
I'm waving in the dark.
No, you're fine. Hang on there for a quick second. We'll wrap up the show and we'll talk for a second. So, thanks everybody. We'll see you next time.
May your finds be many and your DNFs be few. May the terrain and difficulty both be less than 2. And whatever it is you're looking for, may it find its way to you. And may we all meet again.
Folks, we hope you've enjoyed the show tonight. Please email us your comments at geocachetalk@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The show can be found on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, or Spotify, as well as at the Geocache Talk website. Don't forget to click that subscribe button below and ring that bell notification so that you can see and hear the show on a weekly basis. And tell your friends about the show. Get them involved with us in the chat room. And until next week, don't just talk about geocaching, go geocaching.